Welcome to the Authentic Living and Loving channel, where we feature stories about individuals that are living to the beat of their own drum, doing things a bit out of the ordinary, living authentically and inspiring others to do the same. My name is Dr. Jordan Alexander, and today I'm thrilled to introduce a woman who embodies resilience, leadership, and the power of authentic living, Sharne Fairbrother. Hailing from the breathtaking Wellington region in New Zealand, Sharne grew up with the bold mantra that girls can do anything. But as she navigated a career spanning nearly 2 decades, working in community organizations, corporate HR, and fast-moving tech startups, she discovered that society's definition of anything often came with limitations. Determined to redefine leadership on her own terms, Sharne co-founded Adeptus Leaders, where she helps small business owners and founders develop the leadership mindset, clarity, and skills they need to simplify their start in business and amplify their growth. Through Adeptus and the SME Starter Hub, she provides accessible and actionable support to early-stage entrepreneurs, offering insights gained from years of working with people at all levels, from founders to teams that are navigating rapid growth. Sharne is also a being practitioner. She's trained in ontology, the study of being, and it deeply influences her coaching and leadership philosophy, and we'll hear more about that. She also believes that how we are as leaders matters just as much as what we do. And that success isn't just about strategies and systems, but also leading with the heart, listening to the body, and aligning with true values. Beyond her professional world, Sharne is a dedicated mother, a lifelong learner, a yoga enthusiast, and a seeker of joy, whether it's by the water's edge or in a lush greenery in her rural home. And I've been there and it's beautiful. Her work is not just about the success, but about the legacy, showing her daughter that everything is possible, and her son about what it means to honor and empower women. Join me in welcoming the incredible Sharne Fairbrother.
Thank you so much.
For your intro, Sharne. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. It's awesome to be having this conversation today.
Does it feel a bit weird hearing, like you're a pretty incredible woman, right? And I'm reading obviously a little bit about your bio, and I can see, there's a little smile and how does it feel hearing about, how incredible you are?
Yeah. I think it's something that I've definitely been on a journey with, I would say. I think had you reeled that off 5 years ago, even actually, I still would have been much more deeply uncomfortable than the slight discomfort that it kind of triggers today. I think, it's the journey of kind of owning all of my stuff and all of me, and all of the good and all of the kind of sometimes not so good.
Absolutely. It's so funny because I think too for women, it's so funny, right? Like, because if it was a guy that was answering that question, it'd be like, oh yeah, and I forgot bits, right? Like,
yeah. Let me tell you, I've still got some things to add. I'm like, we can take some of this out. We don't need to go so heavy on that.
exactly. It's so funny. Anyways, okay, so let's get started. And I love to start at the beginning.
Yeah.
Sharne is a little wee kid. And so I wonder, is there something in your background, in your past, some sort of a memory that gives a little hint to you currently being authentic, purpose-driven? Was there something that was always there, right from a wee dot?
Yeah, it's so interesting. I think when I've reflected on this, I have really vivid memories from kind of that 10 years onwards kind of phase that relate to this. But actually now, having an 8-year-old daughter, I see a mirror of oh, I'd forgotten I was like that, at a younger age. And I think the way that I would describe it was I just had this kind of courage and lack of care for what other people were doing and thinking, such that I would just kind of go, well, what do I want to do? And I'm just going to do that. So, it wasn't particularly like cool and trendy to be like an absolute bookworm, but I loved the world of books as a young kid, as I see my daughter kind of do now, and would just like escape and kind of fall into that. And, I copped some flack for that. As I got to my intermediate years, I was kind of like, like playing netball was like the thing that I've been doing. All the girls were doing that. It's like, I actually really like rugby and I'm just going to go and do that. And like nobody that I knew, other girls were playing rugby. I had to go and join the local club, which was only boys teams. They didn't now, much more, there are many more females playing rugby and you can actually join kind of girls only teams. That didn't exist when I was growing up. So here I was in the kind of team of boys, like just giving it a crack. Deciding to become an exchange student at a very, like, that was a goal that I reached when I was 16, but I'd made that decision at really like 13 that I was going to become an exchange student. Again, like that wasn't mirrored or modeled to me. I was just like, I'm going to do that. And I did. I think at some points in my life, that's been a really helpful anchor actually to go back to and be inspired by, where actually I felt maybe less courageous or less, maybe more influenced by like, well, what's everyone else doing and like, what should I be doing versus like actually what's in my heart and just do that.
Oh, that's so good. And it's almost leads into that, that Sharne can do anything, girls can do anything.
Yeah.
Was there sort of a girls boys thing when you were growing up? Obviously, there wasn't a girls rugby team that you could join, which,
Yeah.
is the thing. Hopefully
Yeah.
our my granddaughters, your daughter, because she plays rugby too, doesn't she, Lucy?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that different times growing up in the 80s, early 90s. But I do think that messaging of the, girls can do everything, like it was, I don't know if I specifically remember the messaging, but it must have been so pervasive that that was very much the kind of the foundation that I was working from as far as me and the world was concerned. And I remember the things that showed up counter to that, like maybe I wasn't so surprised that I was like the only girl in the rugby team when I first started out playing, but I remember vividly going to a particular club and they had no changing facilities or like toilets for me to access. Like it was all like open changing shed and like open, like a urinal. I don't even think they actually had like a sit down toilet that was unlocked.
That
And
would
so
have
I
been
had to go to
fun.
the petrol station across the road to like get changed and
Oh,
like hit. And I remember that being really like, it's just so bizarre to me. Like, what do you mean that? Like, and I think obviously as I got older and kind of experienced the world a bit more, those sorts of things kind of made sense. So like, oh, this is, the world that we're in and actually continue to be in isn't one that was designed with women front and center.
yeah, so interesting. There's I don't know if you saw that there was this little clip that had two young kids, a little boy and a little girl, and I think it was Justice Beecroft or something around his time, and it was talking about equal pay
Yes, I
and
remember that.
asking do you remember that? There was like,
Yeah.
they're saying, hey, so you're going to do this much, and you're going to get $2 and she's going to get $1. And oh, well, that's not fair. And it's so counterintuitive. Our system feels so counterintuitive to the things when you were little that
Yeah.
just made sense. You played rugby and it didn't matter. And it was kind of like, oh, there's no, how do I pee in a urinal? And then, and then it's like, it just doesn't make sense to have these disparities. And yet you grow into a world.
Totally.
So at some point in time, it becomes okay to earn 70 cents on the
Yeah.
dollar.
Yeah. I think that could like kids can be our biggest teachers, right? Like as a mum now, having the world mirrored back to me through the eyes of a 5 and an 8-year-old, just the thing, like so often, particularly my daughter, she kind of thinks quite deeply about things and takes stuff out in and processes it and comes out with these questions or observations where she's like, well, that's obviously just wrong or rubbish, or, and I'm like, yeah, like when you come from a like what's natural and intuitive and just makes, sense in a holistic sense, it is. And that's the way that the world is playing out currently.
Mm. And that's one of the things that you're changing as well, which is great. We'll come to that. Um, One of the other questions that I'm really keen, we're both in New Zealand, and obviously, our place where we stand, our Turenga Waiwai, is very important for all kinds of reasons, really. I mean, it gives you your strength, it gives you your sense of identity, and all of that. Um, Maybe you could share with us a little bit about, where home is for you, and how that influences your work and your philosophy.
Yeah, yeah. I think there's actually two places that really that feel like home to me. So growing up, I grew up in a place called the Hutt Valley, which is just outside of Wellington. And if you're outside of New Zealand, like that, the reputation of the Hutt Valley is very bogan, which I was trying to think what the outside of Australia, New Zealand translation of that is, but like it's not particularly known to be sophisticated location or people. It's probably polite way of putting it.
We call it in Oshawa, because I grew up in Oshawa too, the wrong side of the tracks.
Yeah, a
Like
little
that was
bit.
where in Oshawa do you live? I'm on the wrong side, South Oshawa, wrong side of the tracks. So
Yeah,
people will get that, I think.
yeah. And I think, part of that reputation is earned and part of it is probably a little bit unfair, increasingly unfair, I think. But, I think from an identity perspective, the kind of down to earth, like not taking yourself too seriously and, kind of be practical and grounded, I think has been a strong influence in terms of who and how I show up in the world today. The other place for me is growing up and still today, about kind of 4 hours north of here, where my parents kind of would always take us to the same place on the beach for like a month every Christmas holidays. And over time, they kind of built up enough where we could have like a permanent kind of site, like a caravan with like bits, shacks like tacked onto it, very, very grassroots. But that place is so precious to me, the sense of almost like shedding the baggage of kind of day-to-day life and being able to go somewhere that is so grounding and on the one hand disconnected. Like I think it was only like 12 months ago that the place actually got cell phone reception. So
Right.
and I'm actually really angry about it. Like that was one of the massive beauties of it, that you'd kind of get about 20 minutes out and you would lose all kind of connection with the outside world. So disconnected on the one hand, but very connected. Like when you were there, therefore all you could do was spend time with yourself and the others that were around you. And I think that create, the importance of creating space, the importance of being able to be grounded, to take a breath and then connect, I think has also been a really big influencer for me.
That's so beautiful. And that I'm assuming it's a bit of nature around there too.
Yeah, yeah, nothing like the I don't know, it's almost like I just feel my chest cavity like physically expand when I step barefooted onto that beach and go, like just the deepness of breath and the availability of kind of oxygen in life just feels it's special.
Oh, that's so beautiful. And it's like, how do we get that kind of a sense of connectedness and, oh wow, my lungs actually have a big and wider
Yeah,
capacity.
yeah.
That whole shallow breathing, deep breathing.
Mm.
How does how does that relate to, when we're back at the office or back in at work, or, like how do we integrate, and some of that I think we'll talk about a little bit when we talk about our body stuff.
Yeah, I would love to, because there's so many lessons in there.
Yeah, cool. Okay, that's a great anchor. Okay, so little Sharne grows up. She becomes big Sharne in the
Yeah.
best possible way. And you've spent in your career, let's pivot into your career stuff. Um, you've been in corporate HR, you've been in tech startups, you've done community driven roles. Um, what made you decide? Like, what was there a turning point that led you to start Adeptus Leaders?
Yeah, I think really it was coming out of the big corporate world and into working with smaller businesses and startups. Um, I'm kind of having this realization now as we speak, kind of perhaps from the earlier part of our conversation, that just like there was a point where I realized, like, oh, the world's not kind of really designed for or by women. Um, Coming into smaller businesses, I could really see the contrast of, like, gosh, the world of business is really designed for and by big corporates, and that just doesn't work. That's not fit for purpose for these smaller businesses and what they need at the kind of earlier stages of their journey. And so either they recognize the mismatch and therefore miss out, like don't have access, or they try and kind of jam themselves into that like misaligned, ill-fitting mode, and kind of bear the consequences of that. So really, the trigger point was, actually, surely there has to be a better way. We can create something that is fit for purpose for those small, medium-sized businesses, and gives them access. It's not like it's all of the big corporate stuff is wrong and evil. Like, there is fantastic stuff that I have had exposure to through my career in corporates. Like, let's not have the small and medium businesses miss out on that. How can we make it accessible and approachable for them?
Yeah, it's interesting as you're saying that, and I love the parallel almost, you know, the system wasn't built for small businesses. And I guess that's the system that we've got now, right? I think about my dad who was in business for himself and everything. It is almost the also ran. It is almost the wrong side of the tracks. And it's only, it's almost like there's this land of SMEs that time forgets, or that until you cross the threshold into the big guns, and then you've earned your stripes, and then we talk about it a lot. But how do you get that spotlight and real appreciation for what really is such a huge part of the economy? And, like 95% of the businesses or more in most countries are like five and less people, and they're essential. Yet very rarely, unless you're opening the community rag that comes out on a
Yeah,
Wednesday,
yeah.
you even hear about them.
Yeah, so true. I think, then that, obviously we're setting out to make a little dent, our contribution in that, right, and changing the perspectives, not just of people that are already in that kind of preaching to the choir, but actually to people outside that particular community looking in. That it's certainly not, as you say, when it makes up such a large proportion of the businesses in a country. I think I read that somewhere the other day, up to 40% of many countries' GDPs comes from the small business sector. Like, it's a really, really crucial part of the communities and the economies that we're in, not to be dismissed.
Okay, so we know the stock standard, strategy, planning, make sure that you have your, these processes in place. But one of the things about Adeptus and the SME Starter Hub is really about the focus on leaders.
Yeah.
So talk to me a little bit about why focusing on who these SME founders and owners are being as leaders is so important.
Mm. I think like it's a bit of a cliched analogy, but it works. So I'm going to use it anyway. Strategy, execution, like the delivery, disciplines, like crucially important. Like think walls of the house. Like you ain't got a house unless you've got those walls in place. But leadership, like what is that foundation that the whole thing is built on is make or break. Like you can have the best constructed wall in the world and it's going to fall down actually if it's on, rubbishy sand that, moves everywhere where it's not supposed to. So I think that, that for me, like the coming back to actually what matters most, what's underneath everything, what is at the fundamental core of what it means to be effective in leading and owning and founding small businesses. For me, it is that leadership space, and so that's why that foundation for me is the place to focus.
Mhm. And what would you say some of the common traps are, that leaders fall into?
Mm. I think, I mean, there's lots, right? And I've fallen into lots of these myself.
Uh,
Very much the kind of head down, like I am the one woman island, I can do everything myself and, have the weight of the world on my shoulders and actually take some other people's weights and chuck that in there too, I think is a really common one. So trying to just be all things to all people at all times. Um, I also think there's a bit of a trap when it comes to then okay, if you're not going to be the one woman or man island, that means that you're interacting with people like all humans and all of our beautiful weirdness and complexity. The tendency to avoid or go like, oh gosh, any like the people stuff is big and scary and uncomfortable and I don't know how to do that, or like I don't have the exact like textbook answer because there isn't one when it comes to dealing with people, and so I'm just not kind of going to go there, or like shifty around and stuffing people without kind of confronting stuff head on, I think is another really common one. And I think a lot of people again relate to that as like, oh, there's some like technical skill around dealing with people that I haven't learned yet. My view would very much be no, like there is some deeper, more fundamental things that you possibly aren't aware of about yourself that are the things that are actually the keys to unlocking your ability to build great relationships, have great interactions, and even when things are a little bit tough.
and this is really, I guess, stepping into that ontology space,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, absolutely.
So as a being profile practitioner, um, how can the ontological way of looking at things help a person as a leader?
Mm. I think, my view is that the ontological approach is a really important one because it gets below, as I've kind of alluded to, the surface actions, skills, technical capabilities, really into the heart of who and how are you being and showing up in the world. Like what's your relationship with, yourself and reality, and inspect that before you then look at kind of what's your relationship with others. And I think that really matters because, as I just said, like leaders do exist inside of systems, frameworks, communities, teams, relationships, family units, like all of those things are at play, and create the environment that a business leader is in. And being anchored in a deep understanding and knowing and awareness of, okay, well, who am I and how do I show up in the world? And that's not all, and sometimes I'm showing up as my best self and sometimes I'm not showing up as my best self, is as I said, I think I've had, you know, things that I've been relating to as a technical skill gap that I've worked and worked and worked and worked on years and years and years, and I've had taken an ontological approach to it and had a breakthrough and an insight in 5 minutes that actually has changed the game. So for me, it's deeper, but I think it's faster.
Totally. The faster, I 100% agree with that. And it's, I mean, if we think about if somebody was listening and they're thinking, well, how do I start on that? How do I go there? And I just wanted to add to what you were saying that I had this coaching client the other day, and she's a coach, and she wants to be it's her side hustle, so she's she wants to be a SME at some point. She wants to have her own business. She's an in-house coach and an engineer for a tech company, and she's been beating this drum for years. And she attended this event, and so within 60 minutes, Sharne, within 60
Mm.
minutes of holding up the mirror and going to her sense of courage and commitment, so that the things that were holding her back was, it's almost that 10 seconds of courage to actually say the thing, hey, would you like me to have a session on that? Or it's not the smarmy selling kind of stuff. So the courage that sits underneath all of those, the four walls, the foundations,
Yeah.
the this, the da, 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 da. And then the commitment part was the other distinction from an ontological perspective. When I was talking to her, I said, so how important is this to you?
Mm.
And she says, oh, it's about a 7. And it's like, okay, so where's the commitment? If it's not a 10, like if this isn't really important to you, and what is your sense of what are you going to sacrifice to achieve this? It's like, yeah, it's a 7. It ain't going to happen. So
Yeah.
where is that commitment and that sense of courage playing out not only in her desire to make her side hustle a real SME, but also in her life, as you say, the family stuff, the friendship stuff, all of the everything.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think, yeah, as much as we like to kid ourselves, we are rubbish as human beings at actually compartmentalizing stuff. So if you've got something playing out in one area, like actually maybe I'm a little bit like half pregnant when it comes to the coaching side hustle, actually where does that pattern show up elsewhere, and how is that impacting the world, the reality that you're kind of experiencing.
So, okay, so I say, great, I'm in, I want to do this, right? I want to take the being profile. What actually happens next? So so I give you a call, jump on the Adeptus Leaders website. What's next?
Yeah, so I love the being profile because having done a lot of work in the ontological space, when I got exposed to this as a profile, I was like, this is like the keys to the castle, and that, like, stuff that would take a long time in a traditional kind of coaching setup to kind of unpick all through the layers. You just get instant access to, with a 45-minute assessment, give or take. So yeah, from a technical perspective, it's as easy as, following a link, putting some, a few details in, and then answering some questions. There's a fair chunk of questions. As I say, it's about 45 minutes, but I think that speaks to the integrity and the holisticness of the assessment, and that it's not just kind of the answer 5 questions and I'll bare your soul back to you. Takes a little bit of digging to get to that point, but a much faster way of doing it than through than just through kind of conversation.
So they do the survey and they get the report that's, hey, this is what's going on below the surface. And so they get that window into some of those leadership things. So it's kind of getting the inside bit under sort of, okay, we've got a plan here. On the outside bit for SME, so that we live in a VUCA world. you know? So yeah, so we're working on the inside and stuff is happening on the outside. What, in your opinion, is sort of on the horizon for SMEs that they need to keep their eye on? And how
Mm.
might they do that? Are there some trends um, or things that you've got sort of an opinion and some insights on that would be helpful?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting space, right? Like, as you say, the world is always changing. I'm very much of the view that, anyone living, particularly over the last couple of years, like, okay, right, I'll just get through this like pandemic, recession, election cycle, like insert whatever here, and then like things will settle. Like it's like the settle's not coming. This is the world that we're in now, where there will always be something else, pulling the rug out from under us and our
So true.
little illusion of stability. And so, um, in some ways that makes it quite hard to, and maybe a little bit foolish to try and predict like what are all the trends that you're going to have to respond to, because for sure, none of us at the end of 2019 would have been sitting here going, oh, and by the way, in 3 months' time, you'll have like a global pandemic to be contending with. So I think in the face of all of that, the thing, like the kind of orientation that I would take is we'll come back to the things that do give you a sense of an anchor point in amongst all of the cray and give you a sense of a grounded foundation from which to respond and react and kind of dance with what shows up in the world, in your world. For me, that is the deep knowing and understanding of who you are and the ability to choose that that relationship with circumstances and the responsibility that you take and the response and reaction in those moments of kind of uncertainty and blindside.
Yes, it sounds like, if you're an athlete, you're going to the gym, you're strengthening the muscles, um, you're working on the cardio and doing the things so that you can work in this now, what is the steady state of cray cray.
Yeah.
Totally agree. Um, AI. I've got to
Mm.
ask you because you work with a lot of techs and so does the SME Starter Hub. And technology, friend or foe, AI, friend
Yeah.
or foe, like, is it helping? Is it hurting? Oh my God, I'm out of a job. Oh my God, I can do my job better. What's your personal view on all this
Yeah.
stuff?
Yeah. I'm 100% not an expert in this space, but I talk to a lot of people who are pretty close to being experts and have the privilege of being surrounded by some very, very smart people in this space. And still, across that group, I hear very mixed views from the end of the spectrum of like, this is as fundamental as the discovery of how humans could create fire, through to, like flash in a pan, like, no, it's not going to go away, but is it going to have as big of an impact as, as being touted? Yeah, it'll ho hum, probably not, and everywhere in between. So I think when it comes to like hurting or hindering, at the moment, my observation is both. That absolutely, that there are incredible tools and acts, things that people can, like every day, me, non-tech person, can use to make a massive impact in how effective and efficient you can be in your day. Super helpful. I think the statement of AI is not going to take your job, but people who know how to use AI probably are. That for me does ring true, and I see and starting to see that play out a little bit. So I think this is not something that you can have your like head in the sand about, like wait till it goes away. You do need to kind of engage with this as the current reality. But equally, on the kind of hurt side, it's a beautiful distraction. You know, it can be lovely to spend your days pontificating about, oh, AI, and what's that going to mean for my business and blah, 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 and not confront perhaps some of those more foundational, fundamental things that we've been talking about. You know, be nice if we could blame the world's problems or your business's problems on AI or technology versus, oh, what role am I playing in this?
It's so interesting. Just as you were saying that, it's almost like the flash that came into my mind was a little bit about half empty, half full, and that it's kind of like with technology. It's like we can say technology is half empty or half full. Like, oh yeah, it's helping, it's hindering, and it's a great excuse, isn't it? It's like, oh, I can't use that, or oh my gosh, it's taking my job. But how do we know it's here, right? Like it's not. I grew up. I should preface that without a computer. There were no cell phones, none of that. It was, I remember my first year of university doing like stuff on those big computers. It wasn't like the big, IBMs that you had to use the data cards, but everything printed out and it was still looked like it was coming off the computer. And those were our like finished essay, and it was this shitty little, yucky fonted boxy thing. And it's like, that's been going on for 30 years now, plus, so it's not going anywhere. So get over it, half full it. And even my mom, it's so funny because she's like, technology is, the root of all evil. And then I contrast that with Louise Hay, who always talked about technology as in, look at what it empowers you to do. We wouldn't be able to phone people. We wouldn't be able to do. Here's a woman, well, she's passed on now, rest her soul. But she embraced, older generation, totally embracing it, seeing it for what it is, and really linking it back more as a human to that heart and soul stuff.
Yeah.
And so going to that heart and soul place,
Yeah.
you talk a lot as well about leading with heart. You talk about listening to the body, and it's almost like the contrast that is unplugged, right? That is like there ain't no technology in that space. What does that mean in practical terms
Mm.
for leaders?
Yeah, I think sometimes sometimes it's helpful almost it's to access something through what it's not. And the way that I, increasingly kind of observe the world is, gosh, don't we run around like decapitated people where actually we view the world through this, and then it's like we pretend that the world ends here, and that no information um or access to power and decision making and helpful things that get you through your day is available below the neck. And I think through my own journey, like, takes one to know one. Like that absolutely is how I lived my life through my 20s, really kind of 20s, and have been on my own journey with kind of really realizing, gosh, actually there is so much power and effectiveness available if you remove that block and that cut-offedness, and get in touch with what are the other parts of my body actually telling me, contributing to in the circumstances, and how can you use your body in a deliberate way to be able to gain access to mindsets and ways of being that you haven't had access to before.
Would you be okay if we go to that space
Yeah.
of I mean, you kind of learned the hard way too, right? Like you've
Yeah.
been through burnout and you didn't listen to your body and you had the stress and the overwhelm. Can you go through sort of like what happened for you? Because there might be some signals for other people to show that they're kind of out of, they're still operating from here. And just share a little bit of that story for us.
Yeah. I think for me, this is again not great how this conversation is flowing, because it relates to our earlier conversation around the swirl of the world and the instability and the unexpected. And I came back. I was a mum of two, so my little boy, he was about 7 months old. Through my journey of motherhood first time around, I had realized that as much as I had thought going into that I was going to be like the person that, oh great, I've got 12 months to be able to stay home with this beautiful darling baby, and I'm just going to be like all, apple pie and wholesome and like doing all the things. And I got like 6 weeks into that experience first time around. I was like, oh no, this is who I am, and this is not how I thought it was going to be. And actually, that had some great outcomes in terms of my husband and I going, actually, what works best for our family is being able to share that first 12 months at home and split it. So we'd decided second time around we were going to split that. I was going to go back to work at kind of 7.5 months, and my husband was going to take over. So I came into that 7.5 month point like with the smell of an oily rag left in the tank. Like I had given everything that I had to give to that experience of second time around motherhood and raising those, tiny, tiny humans that are so dependent on you. And in my mind, I was like, it's okay because I'm about to go back to work. Like work is a place where I feel capable and confident, and like I have a contribution to make. I didn't, motherhood was not that place for me where I didn't feel capable and I didn't feel confident. And I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. And, so yeah, going in, great. It's all good. It's all going to be fine because I'm about to go back to work, and it will be like, the tank will begin being topped up again. That was the start of March 2020. So
Hey.
the world had other ideas. So I think I was back at work for it might not have even been a whole week before I was pulled onto the crisis team for a large corporate, a lifeline infrastructure player inside of New Zealand. So when big world events like this happen, they have to keep operating regardless because the country relies on them. Yes, needless to say, long story short, my tank did not get topped up through that experience. It was like, let us pull out the smell of the oily rag that was in there and then keep taking. So going into lockdown, I was kind of locked in a little dark, dingy kind of home office for 12, 16 hours a day. And meanwhile, my husband and kids were outside that closed door. He was operating as a sole parent, really, for that period. That wasn't the bargain that he thought he was getting either, as, about to be going into being the stay-at-home dad for 5 months. And yeah, I kind of hit a wall. We came out of full lockdown, but we were still working at home. And it was kind of like you can meet up with other people outside and distanced and all of that. And so we decided, right, I've been working like a crazy person. Like, I'm going to take a longer lunch break today. It's a beautiful day. We're going to chuck the kids in the car and go and meet some family down at a local park, and kind of the kids can kind of have at least my older daughter could have a hoon around on her scooter and push Frank in the pram, and it would be good. And on the way to that, I had the first and only panic attack that I've had in my life, and was like, oh my gosh, like, am I having a heart attack? And at least I had enough wherewithal to go, actually, I've been around enough, had enough exposure to the world of mental well-being to know, actually, no, this isn't a heart attack. I know what this is. So yeah, it's I think there's the lesson in that, in terms of actually when you don't, it was only when I when I took, even just that little micro pause of, okay, I'm just going to step out of the office and go and do something different for, an hour today, rather than the like 2 minutes that it takes me to run to the fridge and shovel food in my face. that my body actually could send the strongest signal of, whoa, like you had not been listening to the little signal, so here's a really big one.
Mm. So what did you get like, so okay, so now hello, wake up call, anvil to the head, not having the heart attack, but really having that real, okay, gotcha. I'm hearing what's happening below the neckline. What were some of the things that you put into place then to help you reconnect physically in your own body and stuff like that, and that have kind of led to your more heartful, I guess, approach to leading with, you know, that whole integrated mind, body, heart sort of thing?
Yeah. So I think, I had some practices that worked well, had worked well for me prior to that point. Clearly, I was not practicing any of those at that particular time. But yeah, again, even through my kind of head cut off, like almost like scientist mode, I had built some practices through doing things like, I started doing yoga, and I got to yoga by reading a book that was recommended to me, Rushing Woman Syndrome, and going, I'm totally that person that's like, working in the big corporate job, and like before work, I'm signing myself up for these like high intensity boot camps and all of this kind of stuff. And this book's going, actually, here's the research around why that might not be a good idea. Well, that research appeals to the head. Maybe I'll give that, I'll experiment with that for myself. Oh, lo and behold, actually, when I stopped doing the boot camps and instead maybe take on with more restorative exercise practices like yoga, given I've got a lot of stress in my, 9 to 5.
Yeah, that yin and yang, right?
Yeah. Then, I had that experience of like, actually take some things for a spin, see how that works out for you. Okay, yes, this is a thing that works for me, so I can integrate that as a practice. So again, mindfulness practice, I had access to through the same kind of approach. It wasn't a full meditation process at that point, but I had some anchors that I could kind of draw on immediately. It was still a real struggle though. The head kind of, the talk of, you don't have time for this, like, oh my gosh, what's in your inbox that's waiting for you? Like, crack on. Like, there were still definitely times that I really fought and lost against the internal talk of, why is this something that I should be prioritizing right now? And then I think I think there's a moment of intuition in here where it was almost like, it's not like I kind of tried those practices and they were insufficient, so I went looking for more. I think at the same time as putting those practices back in place, I had that moment of intuition of going, that those things alone have been sufficient for me to be able to be effective and maintain my well-being and enhance my well-being up until this point. They are insufficient, they are not sufficient now. So you're going to need to add some more tools to your toolkit, go out and search, which I did. And I think that search and explorations led me down all sorts of paths that, again, if I think about my previous like head cut off 20-year-old self would be looking at me going, that is so weird and out there and like, woo, like, what are you up to? But, the thing that's remained the same has been that kind of philosophy of, you know what, I don't know about this, but I'm going to take it for a spin and try on the coat, see if it fits. Sometimes it does. I've tried things where I'm like, that's cool, and it's not for me. And like,
I gotta ask, Sharne. I mean, as soon as you said weird, and my mind is like stuck on the weird bit, but so I gotta go back there, right? I gotta ask you, what's the weirdest thing that you've ever tried, like in this, like maybe it's woo-woo land. That's where I'm thinking it is, but what's the weirdest thing um, that you've tried to sort of
I think, yeah, probably, I don't know, lots of things are popping up. I don't know what the weirdest is. I mean, again, my 20-year-old self would have been like, okay, you just do yoga for the like for the effectiveness of it. Like you're not a kind of like sit in circle, feeling each other's energy, like chanting mantras kind of yoga person. Like I totally am that yoga person.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
I don't know. I dived deep, quite deep for a while in terms of like the world of like sacred feminine energy and kind of listening to kind of other people's perspectives on that, how it shows up in the world, how how they were able to kind of access that, taking some of that from a kind of a spin for myself. Again, like some of that I'm like, oh no, that's not for me. Some of it I'm like, actually has given me a really different kind of relationship with who I am as a woman. So yeah, I don't know. I think it's fun. It's fun to play, right? And just again, not take yourself too seriously and be like, that kind of something about that seems really interesting. Or as you and I have talked about before, oh, something about that is giving me the like, heck no. So maybe that's the very reason that I should explore that a little bit more to see where that reaction is kind of coming from.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, the be curious, obviously one of the key parts of Adeptus Leaders. And that curiosity, I think, just plays really nicely into that. Every SME founder and owner is different. And what weird is gonna work for you might be completely normal for me, or vice
Yeah,
versa, or whatever.
totally.
And going there, like having the courage, going back to that distinction as a leader, to go there and to realize, hey, my body's telling me, bing, 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 something's happening. I'm feeling stressed. I'm feeling tired. I look like, I haven't slept, which I haven't. I have a puppy dog and I feel like I haven't slept, but
But also in your newborn motherhood phase of a four-legged baby.
exactly, exactly. It's like, will it ever sleep? Um, I guess it's giving ourselves permission also to try some things,
Yeah.
and that it's not a course that you have to pass or fail. You can pick it up, have a good look around, and say no. Or you can pick it up and go, oh my gosh, where have you been, you beauty, all my life, sort of thing. And it sounds like that's something that you do as a just a way of living, really.
Yeah.
Like you've got that book learning stuff that you were, the reading and the understanding that from a very young age. Sounds like it's still a big part of your life.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that I suppose what I'm really present to now is the access to that comes through the curiosity, the courage to give some on the surface weird stuff a try and see what's behind the surface. And also the perspective of that play and exploration, even if it doesn't end up in something that's like the next best thing since sliced bread for you, is worth it. It's quite counter to the time scarcity, like productivity, schedule the ounce out of, every aspect of your day. And like, why would you go into exploration mode when, you've got a guaranteed return from dealing with your inbox? Um, I think that, that aspect of the call it broadly kind of hustle culture is really unhelpful in and enabling people to actually take the time and space to constantly renew and revisit how they can be the best version of themselves.
And it's so, I love what you're saying, and it's so relevant to founders and SME owners, right?
Yeah.
Like they just, it is the hustle culture. It's so much, well, you're it, or you're it of a group of whatever, a dozen or, 20, 100, but everything's on your shoulders, and you better make it work. And it's them living in, and we've done it, we continue to call ourselves out on it, in that technical role. When are you the entrepreneur or what, because but I feel more comfortable doing the doing and baking the pies and coding the software. And it's like, but I'm running a business here,
Yeah.
and so running a business, being curious and playing, and unlatching some of those horrible, well-trodden neural pathways in your brain is exactly what you need
Yeah,
to shift that shit and actually get on with the effectiveness of running your business.
totally.
So you're thinking that you can sort of also help small businesses and stuff by compiling some of these tips and tools
Mm.
and things in a book, Fly Higher, the 12 Secrets to Soaring as a Leader and Living a Better Life. So what inspired the book? Tell us a little bit about, what is this about? What is this project about? And, you know, what's it going to do for leaders?
Yeah, I think just like we talked about the being profile earlier, kind of being the fast track. As you said, our experiences navigating, the journey that I've been on over the last, over my life, but really like meaningfully the last kind of 15-ish years. It's the book gives us the ability to be able to condense all of that long passage of time and exploration and like, oh, what about this? And what about this? To create a kind of a record of a combined set of experiences that goes like, yes, we're all beautiful and unique and different, and it's going to be different things for different people, but in canvassing, not just our experiences, but quite a wide audience, here are the 12 things that really we think it boils down to when it comes to being your best self as the leader of a business, as the leader of a life, as a leader within family units, and so on.
Awesome. That's so cool. So there's a couple of there's 12 elements. Is there one element out of these distinctions that's sort of, like, oh, I love awareness, or oh, I love love, or oh, I love responsibility. Is
Yeah.
there anything that's sort of like, what's your favorite? If you had to pick one.
Yeah, it's like the pick your favorite child. I don't know. I love them all. Awareness is cliched, but it is the anchor. Like all roads lead to awareness, and I think, I know that for me the biggest transformations have come where there's been a closed door and someone's cracked that, helped me kind of crack that open, or I've been able to kind of have an experience that's cracked that open for myself and gone, oh my gosh, I've, light bulb moment. I've just seen myself or the world or who I am in the world in a totally different way. And I can never unknow that.
Yeah. So, okay, so we're coming sort of to the end of our time together. Um, what does we're recording in January, so it's the beginning of a year, and a lot of people have New Year's resolutions, and what does the year ahead hold and all that. Just broadly, what's next for you, sort of
Mhm.
personally and professionally?
I'm really excited this year, being we're right in the I don't know what the stage of labor analogy is for, like, just about to push out the baby that is me startup, out into the real world. I'm hugely excited about being able to take as we've talked about, the collection of learnings and experiences of everything that we've done individually and collectively, and bring those in a really accessible package to small business owners. I think the the tools and experiences that we're crafting in there are akin, in many cases better than what I've had access to in the corporate world, knowing that my employer was paying kind of $50,000 a head for it. And so to be able to bring that same level of quality and insight and experience in a fit for purpose, customized way for small business owners, again, and make it really accessible and approachable, is just yeah, I can't wait to see how that plays out. From a personal perspective, I'm on the word of the year like bandwagon. I've done this for a while, and I used to have kind of like 2 or 3 words that I would use to kind of thematically anchor my year and my approach to a year. And then I read Essentialism over the Christmas break, and really great book recommendation for anyone. It's all about focusing on like, no, you don't have like 2 or 3 priorities. You have one priority. So I narrowed my words down, and my word for the year is accelerate. So accelerate my journey when it comes to my own health and well-being, accelerate my business and career journey, accelerate my success and fulfillment when it comes to my life and motherhood and marriage and all of those things.
Oh, I love that word. It's awesome. It's awesome. It is so full of energy and power and um, promise and opportunity. And what a great word. That's a great word.
Thank
So,
you.
so Sharne, last question. If people are going to take one thing away from this conversation, what do you hope that it is?
Hmm. For me, it is around the possibility, the fulfillment, the exciting exploration and effectiveness that comes from creating the space to access deeper understanding and awareness about who and how you are as a human being. Yeah, it's if you do nothing else, that's a life's work for me, in terms of if you do nothing else in life but understand yourself and seek to be better from that understanding, then that's a life well lived.
Oh, I love it. I love it, love it, love it. And that's a better life for start now.
Yeah,
The best time to plant the oak
yeah,
tree would have been 50 years ago. The next best time is right frickin' now. And it's so I hear that, and that, what a great I mean, talk about accelerating everything. As soon as you start that journey, you can accelerate, and it doesn't mean that if you're a small business owner or founder that you're not already doing really cool stuff. It's like
absolutely.
this is a different layer. This is accessing, you know, 2.0, 3.0, 4.0. And it seems like given our growth journeys, there's like 12.12 and
Yeah,
what. So it is, it's that starting, just begin.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a helpful analogy to end on, that as it would be, I'm putting myself in a listeners and watchers shoes and going, gosh, if I've never heard about the world of kind of ontology, or like thought about growing self-awareness, like, gosh, doesn't this just sound like the silver bullet to all things? And yes, and it's not the thing that you put on the top of your to-do list because today's the day to start, and then you get to tick it off as done and complete. Like, this is the never-ending journey. Once you start, this is like the mountain that you climb that has no top. So once you start on this journey, as you say, it's going to be 12.12. Like, I'm really excited and intrigued about the version of myself that I'm going to be when I'm 20 years older, 40 years older, maybe 50, 60 years older, depending on how the world and, modern health and well-being and medicine evolves.
Yeah.
And I
It's
get
in,
comfortable with it being always there.
yeah, it's embracing that ongoing. I guess you talked about it in the VUCA sense as well. It's like
Mhm.
this is the new normal, and it is going to be this constant swirl. And going down that who you're being and how you're being journey enables you to have that richer, and for me personally, a more colorful
Yeah,
experience. And it's so, because as you go, oh, here, tick that off, and yes, inevitably, off the back of that, there's like, oh, there's this other one. But for me in the ontological journey, it almost feels like we had this sort of black and white version of living in life. And then there was like this sepia kind of, sort of thing. And then there's like, oh, the green's really highlighted on this one. And then it's like, oh, we've got blue. And it almost feels like those layers each come with a bonus. It's like you get this greater color and access to these areas. Like it's almost like, if I don't know if you're a sewer, but if you're I was making some pillows, right? I was making some pillows with those old blankets, just to prove that there is no use by date on anything. And once you sew a seam and stuff, you have to poke out the corners. And it almost feels like going through that ontological journey. It's like we're constantly pushing out the seams so that they lie better, and they're more beautiful, and you can see the form and the shape of it better. And then you've got this color added onto it. And then if the stuff you were saying about the heart and the body and all that. So now we're actually accessing all these beautiful parts of ourselves. Yes, there's work involved, and the journey is richer for it. And so it's pretty amazing to be able to do that, and to do that with small businesses.
Yeah,
Like,
I could not love that more.
so
Well
good.
said.
Yay. Okay, so thank you, Sharne. I mean, obviously it's amazing to hear more about your story, more about what you're working on, how you stay happy and your wonderful, amazing self, and inspire others to live authentically. So thank you very much.
Been
Um,
such a pleasure.
um, you might be reaching out to people in the next little while. What will you be reaching out about?
Yeah. So I think two things. One, we've talked about Flying Higher, the book that we're writing. And as I've said, we're casting the net very wide. We've got a huge wealth of experiences ourselves and with the existing people that we've been working with to draw on. And we want to get an even more diverse range of perspectives. And so if you're a small business owner, an early stage founder who's out there and goes, actually, like, I'm up for sharing my story, or just having a conversation, being asked some questions and seeing what that might uncover for you and your reflection, we would love to hear from you. Secondly, as I've said, SME Starter Hub is just about to properly come out into the world. And again, if any of what we've shared today in terms of understanding yourself and thinking about how you yourself could be the access to greater business success and greater fulfillment and success in your life more generally, that's an area that you want to explore, then we would love to see you over in this Me Starter Hub space in the world, social media and website and platform.
Fantastic. Thank you, Sharne.
Thank you.
Thank you, all of you, for joining us on the Authentic Living and Loving channel. If you have a story to share that will inspire others, we'd love to hear from you. So until we meet again, I'm Dr. Jordan Alexander, encouraging you to join the UBU revolution, and let's all live a life we don't need a vacation from. See you soon.